Hi, I'm Misty Hayes. Good morning. I'm going to be presenting to you my implications for the future assignment. So, there are many issues surrounding early childhood when we're looking at the emergent curriculum and the Reggio Emilia inspired practices. So, I wanted to focus on more than one. I wanted to focus on three. And the three that we're going to be talking about today is environment, parent involvement, and documentation. We know from the Reggio Emilia inspired practices, there are lots of principles that have to be implemented for, early childhood to really be effective, right? We're really looking at these three issues and why they're issues and how they play a role. So as we go through the presentation, you're really going to see me comparing and contrasting traditional schools, early childhood centers, to that of Reggio Emilia inspired practices that have emergent curriculum. So the first one we're going to talk about is environment. So going back to what Malgasi said, he defined the environment as the third teacher. The environment really has to be responsive to the need for teachers and children really to create learning together. So when we're creating environments, we really want to be able to reflect the values of the community and to the children. How do we communicate that to the child? So it really does play a central role in the process of making learning meaningful. It really helps shape the child's identity. So we really have to look at the environment being a third teacher. How do we organize and support the child within this space? So what does that look like? So when we're looking at and comparing and contrasting the traditional classroom in early childhood to that of Reggio Emilia, we're really looking at the aesthetics first. If in a traditional classroom, you see bright colored furniture, you have fluorescent lights, you have a lot of store-bought materials. There's not a lot of provocations. It really lacks the natural materials that children can help to engage in to make learning more meaningful. So a Reggio Emilia inspired classroom, really looking at the accents, like how did you set the classroom up? It's very welcoming, it's aesthetically pleasing, and you have a lot of natural elements and accents in there. You set up provocations and materials that help engage in learning and make it even more meaningful. And really, the environment is culturally representative of the community. So these things are very important for us to have to create meaningful learning in early childhood. So my experiences is when I was in education, early childhood education in the public school system, really the environment was not set up to be reflective of the child's learning. So I didn't have this provocation set out there. Teachers have to develop a deep understanding of the Reggio Emilia principles. They really have to have a deep understanding of, guiding the children's thinking, their curiosity, their interest, setting the space up so it's flexible and always responsive. Letting the child be free to construct knowledge. Well, putting the environment together helps do that. It helps foster creativity with those materials and provocations. So we just have to go beyond a surface level and go deeper. And really how we set up our classroom and the environment and it being a third teacher is really going to help with that emergent curriculum component. This is something that most early childhood centers are not doing. They're not looking at the environment and how it plays such a key role. The next thing I want to talk about is parent involvement. So parent relationships are really a foundation of a learning community. Parents have to be seen as partners. We have to see them as highly valued people in their child's education. We need to be able to let them have an active support and role. Help them become collaborators with us within projects we're working on. Really keeping that good partnership and communication open, not just sending them home a newsletter saying this is what we're working on, or we need your help to volunteer for this activity or sign up for PTA. It really has to be based on the foundation of the learning community. They have to be seen as an essential resource to learning. So again, these are some of the things that you're going to see parents involved in. Volunteering for parties or for field trips, chaperoning, meetings, those sorts of things. But really the role of parents should be an essential component of the school. They have to be taking part in children's learning. Okay, so this is really important. Parents really have a powerful effect on children's learning. They are the child's first teacher. We have to see them as a benefit to the child, to strengthen that sense of community. We have to see them as experts and involve them in projects and activities going on, and we need to help build that home to school connection. The next point I want to talk about is documentation. This is so important because documentation allows us to listen to young children. It really helps us to document what's going on, the child's learning. What are they learning? What are their questions? We are able to document conversations between teacher and their peers. We're documenting their work, their play. You know, the learning-based play is so important. And we even want to document really those encounters going on because this is capturing their learning taking place and that learning process. So documentation, you know, you can use your observation notes or notes that you take down, audio recordings, video recordings, photographs. All these are means of ways to capture and document what's going on. We're going to be able to explore their learning process individually and group. And this really helps us reflect and engage in what we're doing, what we need to change. And this helps us grow and reflect and move forward in learning processes. So in a traditional school, you know, they do document, but mostly it's used for portfolios or assessments. They're just showcasing the finished product of student work. They're not really capturing that learning process. And a lot of times it's very decorative, cutesy. It's really less about the child's learning. They're not able to interact with others and use that documentation to help grow the learning in that child, right? We're not respecting that child as work as being valuable. And really, it's not making the learning visible to everyone, letting the students see, hey, this is what we're learning, this is what I did, and enhancing that child's learning. So if we're looking at my experiences and we're going to compare and contrast emergent curriculum and then the traditional curriculum, as I was in the public school, it was more about the teacher-directed approach. We weren't looking at the image of the child. Emergent curriculum really uses child-centered curriculum. Really, teachers should be co-researchers and not facilitators. A lot of times, you know, teachers think that learning is a result of what's being taught, but that's not it. Learning is a result of what's going on as teachers are working with the students, giving them opportunities to discover the world around them, looking at the environment as a third teacher, and using documentation to really help guide projects and next steps and as a collaborative component as well. It's not scripted, okay? And really, we have to look at it as going back to what Malgausi said, it's not, learning doesn't happen from what you're teaching them. It's an overall process of really how you set up your room and what the children are doing and the questions they're asking and their interests and the activities you have for them and the resources. That's when real learning is happening. So the core, on my reflection, I really talked about and summed up what I've learned and also going back on those issues, that relationships is really part of the core philosophy of Reggio Emilia. And part of that, of course, is how we work with parents, and we highly value them as part of the education of their child's education. Going back to that documentation, are we really listening to children and helping that guide learning even further? And the third thing really is how important environment is and how it shapes the child's identity. So they become a powerful player in their own life and take ownership of their own learning. So you have to go beyond that surface level and really understand the Reggio Emilia principles and how these three things play a key role and developing learning in early childhood. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I did provide you with the visual, so you can check that out. It's just letting you guide your thinking about what current issues are and maybe some possible solutions when we're talking about documentation, parent involvement, and environment. Thank you for your time.